hold it that relationship is the foundation of everything in business. And so the stronger your relationship is, the more direct you can be, the easier communication is with each other, and the more you can accomplish together.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. My name's Rick Nusky, and on the line with me today I have KERRY WALLS. How are you, KERRY?
I'm good. Nice to be here.
Yes, KERRY and I were just talking about how she's actually been to Adelaide, South Australia some time ago, and you loved it.
Yes.
Yes.
And the wine.
And
it was good.
Very, very nice. Nice to know. Now, KERRY's a leadership coach. She's a former CEO, and I've looked throughout her website, and she works with both men and women to help them get their businesses up and running. Because I said to her offline that this call is going to be like hand in glove, because we often get to this stage where we have these growing pains, I guess you'd call them, KERRY, when we're looking at bringing on new people, because we can't scale without the help of others, can we?
Right. No, that's where I find people really keep a limit on how big they can go if they can't learn to replicate themselves or produce results through others.
Yeah, and this is very, very deep topic, and I'm not sure in the time we have that we can go into absolutely every area, but I'd love to talk about some of the fundamentals about this idea of what you would say to somebody as the CEO, the founder, and all those sorts of questions. But before we jump into that, I'd love to share where you are in the world and a little bit about your story, KERRY.
Okay. I'm in Maine.
Yep.
I'm out on an island outside of Portland, Maine. I recently moved from Portland, Oregon to Portland, Maine. So I switched Portlands last year to be closer to, I have a daughter in New York City and one in Boston. So that's what I did. And I've also learned to be a business coach just remotely. So I have clients all over the place.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And I have both a master's in counseling psychology and a lot of business experience. I've been a CEO. So I actually have done the things that I talk to other people to do.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you're not winging it. You've actually been there and done that, which is
Right.
kind of important when you're in this sort of field, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I was looking at your story actually about when a founder left the organization and opened a slot for you. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and how it impacted your view of business?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of dynamics that go with that. And I've had a lot of experience in both partnerships and family business, and they have all their dynamics of their own. And when you have a founder, it's hard to let go and step out and really let the next lane of leadership take the reins.
Yeah.
And so how do you really learn to do that? So as a founder, you have confidence in the direction it's going, but also the people underneath have the freedom to take it to where they want to go. So there are lots of stories where the next generation or generations after that have taken it in a different place, and a great place, and a not great place,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do you do that is always a challenge, I think, for businesses.
And when you began to work with people that were at that, I guess, that next step, that growth stage, what did you typically hear them saying about their inability to grow? Was it their own mindset that was holding them back? What was holding them back from actually hiring successfully, do you think?
Usually people get so busy, and as a business grows, they just try to keep working harder, faster, more. And it's not doing the exact same things. You actually have to learn to do different things. You have to learn to hold the context of the organization and communicate to others so they can approach challenges and problems like you would. But often, an owner or founder has grown with the organization, and they've learned along the years.
Yeah.
And it's hard for them to download all that information they have. But if they don't start to get it out of their heads, there's no way they can translate it and help develop other people. And then they just make the people, their employees, wrong. They kind of come back in and take over. And that's the lid on the revenue of the company, because it can't be dependent on one person.
Yeah, but they effectively become the bottleneck, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. And they don't see how they're doing it.
That would be a very difficult conversation for, I guess, somebody coming into the business as somebody new. Let's say in the accounting section, the boss, if you
Hmm.
like, has done it all this time and they've done it a certain way, but somebody who has a specialist background would obviously know
Right.
maybe more efficient ways. They might not be, armed with the skills to confront that boss. How
Right.
is it that they should go about this sort of thing when they hit that sort of barrier?
Well, I think hold it that relationship is the foundation of everything in business. And so the stronger your relationship is, the more direct you can be, the easier communication is with each other, and the more you can accomplish together. So I think it's really important to have trust, respect, and shared purpose. And how do you create that shared purpose with your boss or the person supervising you, so they know that if you're giving feedback, or you have kind of, I would call those fresh eyes when you're a new employee, you
Mhm.
have fresh eyes. I always tell business owners they want their new people to keep those fresh eyes as long as they can
Yeah.
before they get assimilated, because they'll have really good things to say and really can contribute. So they want to listen, but the boss or the founder has to be really willing to develop and listen.
Mm.
So if you can create that shared purpose, like you're both committed to the success of the business, the reason you're pointing something out is for the business to grow, and you do it in a way that isn't threatening, but here's one way to look at it, or have you considered this? There's a way to do it that's kind of from a we versus creates an us and a them dynamic.
Yeah, you don't want to be in that position where it's standoffish, do you?
Right. No.
I'm looking here, and you talk about unlocking the gold that founders have inside them. What are you talking about
Hmm.
when you talk about the gold inside them?
Um, I'll give you an example. I have a really great financial planner. She calls herself militantly fee only financial planner, and she's brilliant, and she really wants to serve the middle class.
Yeah.
She doesn't realize how extraordinary she is, and I find this is true of a lot of business owners, that
Hmm.
they've developed a strong business, and she's done a lot of things. She's written books and been on TV, but her commitment to people's financial success is extraordinary. So it's like who she is when she's in front of a client. She just loves that. She loves to help them. She loves to serve them. How does she get that spirit of who she is to other financial planners, so she can expand that contribution to the middle class? So I think sometimes in coaching, you get to hear yourself. And I reflect it back. I think of another consultant I had who was brilliant in onboarding, and I'd never heard anything like it, because she integrated the HR department, the managers, the hiring, the systems. She integrated it all together. So when you hire someone, you make that first 90 days go really well. And
Yeah.
then you retain people. So when she could realize what she did and talk about it, it helped her both develop staff, but also helped her price. She raised her prices because she could speak the value that she was delivering more strongly and own it.
It comes across as that, that curse of knowledge almost, isn't it? You know so much, and it becomes normal for you that when you reflect on yourself, you think, oh, everybody must know what I must know, therefore it
Yeah,
mustn't be
I
valuable.
always Right. I always say it's like the water you swim in. You don't, when you're a fish, you don't notice. You
That's a
just think
great way
it's
to
all
put it.
around you and you just don't notice. You think it's normal. And then you're kind of upset, like, why don't other people look like this? But you haven't told them, you haven't communicated it in a way that they get it. And if you can start to do that and own, like, there's really values, both those examples I gave, those people were coming from specific values. If they can say what those values are, what their mission of the company is, then other employees can get aligned by that and get behind it.
It seems to me, Kerry, that one of your nuggets of gold for you as a business coach would be revealing those strengths. Would you say that would
Yeah,
be one of your strengths?
yeah, that
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely.
I also think it's it's something we can't do by ourselves. You do have to have somebody else listening to you. We can't, because we don't see it. It's in our blind spot.
Mm, mm. That,
The brilliance that we have. We're taught so much, probably in Australia as well, like, don't brag, don't talk about it, don't be full of yourself. But, in business, you do have to sell yourself and promote yourself. And how do you do that authentically in a way that's comfortable for you so
yeah,
people get the value?
I see that there's potentially a lot of unlearning that fresh entrepreneurs need to go through because they're, in many respects, I'm not saying every case, are taught a certain way when they're coming through the schooling, university systems to look a certain way, do a certain thing. And, the entrepreneurial spirit doesn't necessarily fit into that box, does it?
Mm-mm.
So,
No,
no,
that's for sure.
I wonder, if I have a family business. I also have an external partner to the business, meaning that I have
Hmm.
friends and family that help put things together, and I also have a finance advisor actually who's part of my business as a business partner financially.
Yeah.
And you focus a lot on family businesses. Have you ever seen them combine like that, where you have both, that external party as a on the paper contracted business partner and working with your family? How does that dynamic work out for most companies that you've worked with?
It depends. I find it's useful for people to be clear. I always talk about it. What hat do you have on? Okay, you have a business owner hat on, or you have a spouse hat on, or a sister hat on. Like, separate the roles and really say what conversation you're in, because often people who are in families and working together, it just gets all collapsed together and they're talking about the business all the time, and it just kind of bleeds into their life everywhere. And that can be really hard on people and their well-being, to have it do that. So the more you can separate it, it works. And you can't over communicate.
No.
There's just always communication. Don't step over things. Really work things out and really get each other's perspective so you can stay aligned and you don't accumulate, like, upsets or withheld communication, because that can really damage the business.
And this is very, very fitting for the My Future Business audience, given that I know a lot of the businesses that are listening in, the business owners, they are in very similar situations. Some are quite large and have external, professional business partners that, are part of the business. They are part of the decision-making process. Um, Now let's swing over to them. With this sort of external relationship, is it something that should be contractually bound? We've talked about, speaking a certain way and understanding one's hat that they're wearing. What are some of
Right.
the legal components to this, and how should we set up our businesses like to consider that?
Well, I end up being called in a lot of times with partnerships where I kind of say it like they didn't do the premarital counseling before they
Ah,
got into the partnership.
yep, yep.
And they often have a legal partner agreement, like what happens if one person gets out or something happens to somebody. But it's not the most common stuff that you run into. Like, in some companies, it depends, what your business structure is, but having an operating agreement, how will you work? What if workloads get really disparate, or what, you know, just as things change in the business, things like making decisions. Does it have to be every consensus of everyone? Is it majority rules? What happens if two partners disagree? How how are they going to do those things in the day-to-day of the business? I don't think people really think through that,
Mm.
or even think through, like, what do I want out of this business enterprise? What does the other person want out? Is it aligned? Am I willing to be held accountable? Am I willing to hold the other person accountable? Those are the difficult things that you don't usually talk through. It's really helpful to talk through. But even if you got started and you didn't and you're growing, it's never too late. And it's important to kind of look at some of those things, because the stronger your relationship is, the more you can accomplish together. And if there are relationship breakdowns, especially at the top, it impacts the whole business.
It has a knock-on effect, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the bio here, and one of the things that, aside from the 6 easy steps to cure a sales allergy, that just caught me off guard. I've just noticed it. If you are allergic to sales, you need this document, and we will make this available.
Well, sales is, yeah, sales has a bad name, except if you're in a small business, you have to sell. And so I find that people often don't, because we've all been sold too badly.
Oh, yes.
We don't want to do that to somebody else. And it helps if you can really come at sales from building relationship, really listening, hearing what people's concerns are. So you learn to be service oriented. But that does take practice. And when I find there are a lot of like consultants who are really good at what they do, but then are uncomfortable with the sales. How do you do that? And how do you do it naturally? And I came from a counseling psych background, even though I have business experience, but
Mm-hmm.
also high school English teacher, so I was more like service oriented. So
Yeah.
I know what that path is like, because we tend to think of business as being self-serving. It's not.
No.
It's really to serve. So how do you learn to sell and be effective at that?
Your
'Cause
your background in psychology would unlock the keys to essentially every dimension of business, including sales psychology.
yeah, well, it's important to have both. I read an article once that said when you're looking for an executive coach or business coach, like they either have psychology or they have business. And I feel like I have both
Yeah.
really strong. So I think you kind of need both,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
it's always, all business results are produced from people working together and communicating and coordinating action.
Yeah.
That's all the people and the communication. And if that doesn't work, everything grinds to a halt.
And the way your website is set up, you have two different sections that focus on a different audience, I guess, and in many respects they're the same in terms of the psychology we use when we're interacting with each other as human beings.
Yeah.
Do you find that, for example, the way that men in the workplace, it differs from the way women operate in the workplace in terms of this connection and relationship building? And what can we learn from each other?
I definitely think it's different. I work with a lot of women. I tend to market to women, though I have both men and women
Yeah.
clients. I think women are more adept or developed more to be, more verbal and coordinate action and be aware of other people.
Mm-hmm.
But that can almost be a detriment too. Sometimes they miss themselves or they don't pay attention to themselves. On my website, I have this, I just one day made a video of what the themes I hear in women, how women get in their way in the workplace and what to do about it. There are different things, like we second guess ourselves. We, we don't own our value, like we were just talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I think women especially, can be uber responsible. They'll always look and see, how did I cause that? What did I do? But
Yeah.
sometimes they need to just speak up and say, knock it off, and maybe men are more adept at that. I don't know, but it definitely is a different operating style.
Yeah.
And both are great. Not one isn't better than the other. I often have partnerships where maybe there's a man and a woman partner,
Mm.
and how do they work together, and they have different styles, and that can just be part of the
A-
dynamic.
And this whole, especially, you would experience that quite a fair bit in family businesses, wouldn't you?
Yeah, for sure.
In terms of your offerings, your services, what is your main focus? Is it the family businesses? Is it teaching others to be coaches? Is it onboarding? What do you specialize inside of your business?
Well, I definitely like when somebody's a certain size business that they're growing out of the mom and pop orientation. They have to get more organized.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be as small as 4 or 5 employees. It may be more than that, but how to really get more organized and a little more sophisticated in the business so the business runs without you. And I'm really like helping people be able to do that. Um, Partnerships. And I've also tend to help people recover from a blow in their career, like maybe they got fired or they got demoted. How do they recover themselves and get back on track rather than take it personally and have it be defeated?
Yes, it can
Um,
drag you down, can't it, psychologically?
yeah, yeah. And the other thing, I'm been a coach for 20 years, so I have a lot of experience in on-the-job training, and I am just kind of challenging the coaching industry right now because I do think it's kind of the wild, wild west out there.
Mm, mm.
there there's a wide variety in value and effectiveness of coaches, and the industry has grown so much. But because of my counseling psych background, in that field you have supervision, and you develop with colleagues and you talk about clients. Whereas coaches, I find, are often isolated in their house or they're talking to someone, but there isn't supervision. And
No.
I'm concerned about it. And I don't think value is consistently delivered. And I think clients should be aware of what some red flags to look for. Don't, really look for an effective coach with a track record, who has experience. I'd say it takes 3 to 5 years to become an effective coach. You don't just ta-da.
Yeah, no, well, look,
It's
there seems to be a lot of people nowadays, and I've seen it too, Kerry, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. And what you see is they put up a WordPress website and they grab some learning management system software, whack a name on there, and start offering a product. But they're missing those critical dimensions, aren't they? Those, that
mhm,
verification and validation of competency, that supervision and guidance and realignment with the objective of the training. There's just so much going on. You can't just pick that up
right.
overnight, like you're saying.
No, it takes practice. It takes a lot of practice. And I learned it sitting around a table with really qualified colleagues,
Mm-hmm.
with different orientations. I worked in one place that had a lot of mental health nurse practitioners, and it was really useful.
Mm.
Some people with business orientation, psychology, medical, but to get that kind of looking and expertise with experienced people can save you tons of time. And every time I talked about someone, even though it was uncomfortable sometimes to talk about,
Mm.
I'd always go back in the next session with the client. I'd be more effective,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's how you learn. And you're not going to get that from CEUs necessarily. So I just don't, I think even in Europe, when I Google it, I see more of a conversation about supervision. But otherwise, you can do harm to
Mm.
people. They can be frustrated, or they can try coaching, and they paid a lot of money and invested time, but they don't have much to show for it, and that's not good.
No, they might like, and a lot of times they might have some login credentials and a bit of digital content, and that's all they have to show for it.
Right. Or they might, and I don't know how much there's certification for coaches, but I've seen not good coaches certified and
Oh,
uncertified. So
absolutely.
it's not just based on that.
Mm, mm, mm.
So the buyer or the potential client should really check things out
It's
and ask questions. And
the buyer
I'm
beware, isn't
writing
it?
something on Medium just about that, how to look for that.
That's fantastic. Now, when we want to find you, and when somebody comes along and they're saying, "Hey, look, I need some coaching," and they want to work with you, what is the process that you will take them through?
I usually I want to get to know them and their situation. So what I do is highly customized. It's not formulaic. So I really hold the client as they're the expert on them and their business. So I want to hear about where are they trying to get to and what are their obstacles or challenges. And then based on that, I'll have an understanding if I can help them and how I might help and what I would recommend. So the first session or 45-minute is just to get an understanding. So there's no charge.
Yeah.
And from there, I make a recommendation. Usually it's weekly coaching. There might be a day. It depends on what they need, but generally I work with people for at least 6 months because I find that when you're changing behaviors, it takes a certain amount of practice. So
Yeah.
if they stop coaching, I want them to be able to have those tools to take with them. Usually people work with me longer because they get results or they get a promotion or their business grows and then they have new challenges. So they just continue growing. So often it's 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
But I've had clients on and off for 10 years.
Yep.
They come back, depending on what's happening. So
Yep. They just love your work and they want to keep working with you. Where is the website that they will find you?
it's just coachingcollaborative.com.
Fantastic. And I will be making all of those links back to Kerry through our various distribution channels. Kerry, it's been an absolute treat spending some time with you talking about this wonderful topic on the My Future Business show today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.